Okay, so we're making bobbleheads. This one is not clay, but just to kind of give you an idea, right? Head's gonna bobble. Not clay, and this is probably a little bit smaller than what we'll end up with if we tried to go this small. It would probably be a little bit difficult to do this out of clay. Okay, so I'm just gonna sit him there just so you get the concept. And then I'm gonna also kind of sit out the sketches that I showed you the other day. So in today's demo, really the only thing that we are concerned about are very simple shapes. I'm gonna do a separate demo on actual modeling of the features and adding legs and arms and whatever else your bobblehead might need. So today's demo, we are literally just gonna focus on basic forms. So kind of looking at this sketch where we've got a sphere head, okay, sphere head. Andrew, I'm gonna ask you again, put that pencil down. And then the body is just kind of a basic form, okay? So we're focusing on that today, and then there will be more demos to kind of talk more about adding things because we just want to start with the basics. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab my clay. This is the same clay that I used, that I mixed for you guys in the clay mixing demo, and that I used for tiles. So if you still have clay left and it's soft, keep on using it. You don't have to mix new clay just because we started a new project, okay? So I'm gonna start with the body of my little panda man. And if we look at it, so if we break it down into basic shapes, okay, like we did right here, there's a larger pinch pot on the bottom and a smaller pinch pot on the top, okay? So larger on the bottom, smaller on the top. So we're just talking body right now, okay? So that's what we're gonna do. And we need to think about our vent system, right? Because if we make an enclosed hollow area, what do we have? Clay bomb. We've got, it's gonna explode. So we need to think about making sure that we vent the system, okay? I have the panda on a little platform. That is not required. But what we do need to think about is making sure that the body is gonna hold up the head, okay? So things to think about as we get started. So I'm gonna go ahead and wedge my clay. Why do we wedge clay? To get the air bubbles out, okay? And to make a pinch pot, okay? So the new technique that we're learning is pinch pot. So we're gonna create this out of pinch pots. I wedged, I'm going to make a ball out of clay. One thing that I'm gonna tell you, if you look at my hands, you can tell that my hands have picked up moisture from my clay. The more you touch your clay, the more it's taking moisture out of the clay. So it's gonna wanna dry out quicker. And as you pinch, it could start cracking right away. So I wouldn't sit there and play with your clay for an extended amount of time because it's gonna keep taking the moisture out and it's gonna wanna dry and crack as you try to actually make a pinch pot, okay? So wedge it, get it in a ball, and then to make a pinch pot, we're going to pinch in, okay? You can use 1 thumb or 2 thumbs depending on how big the pinch pot's gonna be, okay? And we are going to pinch, pinch, pinch to 1/4 of an inch, okay? I know you can roll your eyes at me, it's fine. Okay, funny little jingle to help you remember that that 1/4 of an inch thickness is really, really important, okay? If our pinch pots are too thick, they're going to want to crack, explode, not work out well, okay? And if they get too thin, they're just gonna be fragile. So too thin isn't necessarily bad, it just makes them more fragile. So I'm gonna say that typically the top edge is where kids tend to pinch the most because it's the easiest to get to. So it gets really thin, it starts cracking, and it doesn't wanna stay together. So be very mindful of how much you pinch that top lip. You really wanna keep it to about 1/4 of an inch. And then what tends to stay thick is this bottom part because you really have to kind of get your thumb down in there. And so sometimes it gets overlooked. Don't let this right here get too thick or stay too thick because we really wanna get to that 1/4 of an inch thickness, okay? So right now we're just talking overall forms, okay? So bottom of my panda, so right now I basically cut him in half and I did the bottom half of him. I'm gonna add legs later, so we're not worried about legs right now, okay? And I'm gonna kind of flatten that. So once you go through the process of making the pinch pot, you can alter it a little bit in any way. So I can kind of push it around. I'm gonna flatten it a bit. As long as your clay is really nice and plastic, you can kind of tell it what you need it to do, okay? So there is the bottom half of his body. And then now I'm gonna go ahead and make this top, okay, where his arms will be and his neck will be. So I'm gonna grab more clay, maybe a little bit less than I grabbed for the bottom part. So common sense tells me that the more clay I have, the bigger my pinch pot, right? So you kind of just have to keep in mind how much clay you're grabbing and how big you need whatever you're making to be. Okay, so I'm gonna wedge, get those air bubbles out. I'm gonna form it into a solid ball of clay. And then I'm gonna go through the action of making my pinch pot. So I'm gonna pinch in with my thumb. I'm gonna pinch, pinch, pinch to 1/4 of an inch. Okay, being careful that I don't over pinch the top lip, making sure that I do pinch this bottom area, okay? And we want it to be, this is essentially how we want it to sit, okay? Because if you think about the legs are gonna be a little bit bigger, and then if you think about your body kind of comes up and narrows a little bit up towards the top part of you, okay? So I need to do a couple things as I go to attach this. So the first thing that I need to be concerned about, what is gonna happen as I connect this one onto the bottom? Once I connect that on, what's the problem? Okay, I'm enclosing that in. What have I created? A bomb, an air pocket, right? So if I attach that on, this is hollow, right? So that's an air pocket. So this is where our vent system needs to come in. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a needle tool, okay, needle tool, and I'm actually gonna make a hole in my bottom pinch pot because my bottom pinch pot is open, right? Even though it's gonna be sitting on the table, it's not enclosed, right? You guys following? So I'm gonna take my needle tool, I'm gonna push it through, and I'm gonna give it a good wiggle. Okay, so once I put that on there, that is a big enough hole that then this has a vent. Does that make sense? Okay, so now what do I have to do to make sure that this top one stays on the bottom one? Anytime I'm connecting one piece of clay to another, slip and score, okay? So I'm gonna score both, and I just realized I forgot to get slip. Okay, score both. Think about really roughing it up like Velcro. Okay, and I'm gonna kind of see where this one's gonna be. Okay, if you have excess slip score marks, we can always smooth them out. You're the best, thank you so much. Okay, so score both. If we don't score, it won't stay together because we've got to rough up the surfaces so that they actually want to stick together. So score both, slip one. Okay, remember the slip is like our glue. So anytime you're connecting one piece of clay to another, we need to make sure that we are slipping and scoring. Otherwise, as it dries, it will fall apart. Okay, so score both, slip one. I'm gonna wiggle that one on there. Okay, and then I'm going to smooth that seam, okay? Seams are essentially weak spots in ceramics, so anytime you have a seam where you have connected the two pieces, they were not originally two pieces, it becomes a weak spot. So we wanna make sure you can use your thumb, you could use modeling tools, you could use the smooth kidney. We just wanna make sure that we smooth that seam so that where there is an automatic weak spot, we're making it stronger, okay? So whatever you wanna do to smoothen that seam. And for our panda bear, we don't need a seam in the middle of his body, okay? So once you get that together, you can kind of move it around a little bit, okay? So that he is more how you want him to be. You might also make sure that that hole is still there, okay? So this is the startings of his body, okay? I know it doesn't really look like it yet, but it might be helpful for you once you get your sketch drawn to then draw these simple shapes over top, just so you kind of know what your pinch pots are gonna look like, okay? So now, because this is gonna be a bobblehead, we need to actually make the post that's gonna fit up into the head, right? Otherwise we can't make a bobblehead. So what we're gonna do there, we're not gonna make a pinch pot. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna wedge a little bit. I'm gonna make a cone of clay, okay? I'm gonna make a solid cone of clay. Okay, so this is gonna go up and then my head will fit over. So what I'm gonna do, okay, does this seem kind of thick to you guys down here? Is that something that I would probably tell you you can't have a big solid piece of clay? Because what happens to big solid pieces of clay? They could have air bubbles. It might take them so long to dry out that we don't know if they're dried out or not. They explode in the kiln. So this, I would say, is too thick to be solid, okay? So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take a paintbrush and I'm really carefully gonna push it up and I'm gonna kind of wiggle it around, okay? So you can kind of see what I'm doing there. And then I'm gonna pinch a little bit. So I wouldn't count this as a pinch pot, but I am gonna pinch it a little bit. Okay, so now that's nice and hollow, okay? This is not gonna explode anymore. So I need to slip and score this on top, okay? I know it looks kind of funny right now, but this is the logistical things, okay? So we're gonna score, slip, score both, slip one, wiggle that on. What do I have going on here again? I've got two things going on here again, same two things that I had before. What are those two things? What are the things that I have going on that I need to fix before moving on? I've got a seam and I've got an air bubble. Yep. So seam, I'm gonna smooth that down in. Okay, and remember when your clay is really soft and plastic, sometimes it's hard to get it as smooth as you want it to be. So just do the best that you can. Okay, and then the air pocket, I'm gonna take a needle tool and I'm gonna push it down, and I could feel that it went down into the hollow area. Okay, and again, a hole just that big with your needle tool, that is a big enough vent hole, okay? All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and put this part aside. So this is the beginnings of my body. So now I need to work on the head. So the head, if you look at it, is essentially two pinch pots put together, but then we need to put something up in that top pinch pot, thank you, so that when it sits on here, it's actually gonna bobble, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and start, and again, think about how much clay you need. So if we think about the head, how that's gonna sit on there, how much we need, I'm gonna split this piece in half, and I'm hoping that that is, I'm gonna actually grab a little bit more. Pretty good. So again, I'm gonna wedge. So how many pinch pots do I currently have in my project? Two. How many do I need? I need to have at least 3, okay? So the head's gonna take care of that. So I'm gonna form it into a solid ball of clay. I'm gonna pinch into it, and I'm gonna pinch, make sure I'm paying attention to all parts of it. Okay, so sometimes what happens with pinch pots, you wanna kind of pinch it open and it gets really wide and flat. So try to just, I kind of hold it with my hand so it stays in kind of a half sphere shape and it doesn't get too wide. And then I just use one thumb. Okay, be careful that you don't let the top rim get too thin. And we're gonna be attaching another pinch pot. So you definitely wanna make sure that you have a big enough rim that there's gonna be enough space to connect another pinch pot to it, okay? And you know what, looking at this, yeah, that's pretty good. Just wanna make sure it's big enough that it'll actually bobble. Okay, so I've got one, and I'm gonna kind of tap it on my canvas so I have a nice flat area for where my other pinch pot's gonna connect. Okay, and then before I connect, I need to put that little snake so that I've got a little spot for my post to stay in. If you attach the other pinch pot and then try to get in there to attach that piece, it's gonna be way more difficult. So I'm gonna put that upside down like that, and I'm just gonna grab a little piece of clay, and I'm gonna roll a snake in my hand. Okay, I'm gonna roll a snake of clay, and how do I know how big it needs to be? Well, I need it to be a little bit bigger than my post because I want it to kind of hold my post in, but I also want it to have a little bit of room to move around so that it'll actually bobble, okay? So I'm gonna cut the funky ends off of that. Okay, so so it should fit around comfortably, but not like a puzzle piece, okay? Okay, so then, because I'm slipping and scoring this whole snake into that pinch pot, I'm just gonna smooth those ends together and they should be okay. Okay, I'm gonna kind of see how that's gonna fit in there, okay? If you need to kind of flatten the top inside so that it fits, then I'm going to score both. Okay, I can't get in there with my scoring tool, so I'm gonna use my needle tool and just again, rough it up. Okay, it's easier to put slip on the ring. Okay, and then I'm gonna put that back in there. Now, we do have a seam, but I wanna make sure that this ring is actually gonna, okay, stay put and work. So I'm gonna smooth it on the outside and I'm gonna kind of leave the ring on the inside. I'm just gonna take maybe one of the silicone tools and I'm gonna just run it along the inside of that seam so that it closes the seam. It gets rid of any extra score marks, but it does stay there. Okay, so at the end of it, I'll show you what we've got. It's essentially a little ring where that post is gonna fit into. Okay, if you wanna make it a little bit taller, you could, just to make sure that that post is gonna catch and stay in there. Okay, and then once you have that in there, I can make the second half of my panda head. Okay, so I know we're not looking like a panda yet, but we just need to get the basic forms first, okay? So I just said the word form. Is that a word that sounds familiar? Why? It's an element of art. What is the definition of form? Anybody? I'm making a bunch of forms here. 3D object, yep. So we are always gonna have forms in ceramics. That, I'm gonna grab a little bit more clay. And form is one that you did not have to showcase on your element and principle tiles. Any guesses why you didn't have to showcase form? You're making all 3D objects, yes. So that's an easy one. Okay, so if you noticed, I started to make a pinch pot. I noticed that I didn't think it was gonna be big enough. So I stopped, grabbed a little bit more clay, and re-wedged real quick, and now I'm pinching again. Okay, so again, being careful that I don't pinch too much at the top lip, making sure that I do pinch the bottom part. We really want overall that 1/4 of an inch. Okay, as I am pinching, I can kind of measure it against my top piece, okay, to see if that's gonna work out. On a lot of bobbleheads, you'll see that the head is a little bit over exaggerated, a little bit larger. Mine's gonna be a little bit more in proportion, but you can certainly make yours bigger so it's more bobblehead proportion, okay? So I'm gonna kind of measure that. That looks pretty good to me, okay? I'm again gonna kind of tap, tap, tap so that I have a nice flat connection there. I'm gonna score both. Score both, and I'll slip one. Okay, your slip should smooth on like butter, okay? If your slip is too hard, empty back into the slip barrel and get some new. Okay, then I'm gonna wiggle together. Okay, I've now created 2 things again. What have I created? A bomb and a seam. So I've got an air pocket and I've got a seam. Okay, the seam's easy. I'm just gonna take my smooth kidney. I'm gonna go around. Now for this one, what do I need to make an actual bobblehead? What do I need in this so that it actually functions like a bobblehead? I need a hole so that the post can fit up in there. So in this case, rather than making a vent system that you're not really gonna see, like I've done so far, this one, I can actually work the hole into my design, right? Because I need an opening so that this actually fits on. Make sure that you've taken note which one you actually added that piece to, if you need to mark it before you attach them, because obviously if you cut the hole in the one that you added that little snake, you're gonna be starting over, okay? So I know that it's that one, so in this bottom one, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cut a hole, okay? Because that needs to fit on there. So then from there, I wanna neaten that up, and you wanna make sure that it's wide enough that it'll have room to bobble, okay? And then the other thing that will now happen since I cut this open, I can see my inside seam where I connected my 2 pinch pots. So put a thumb in there and smooth that inside seam, okay? Because we want all seams smoothed out if we can see them. And we want everything that we can see to be really nice and smooth with good craftsmanship, okay? I did notice as I was grading some of your tiles, the bottoms were not very neatly smooth. I do look at that stuff because what I always think, if I wouldn't buy it at a store, why would you make that for your project? So I look at everything as I am grading, okay? So I'm smoothing that, and remember, the clay is still really soft and plastic, so just do the best that you can. So then, okay, obviously it's soft. As it gets harder, as we put the color on it, it's gonna work a little bit better, but that's gonna bobble. So you can kinda adjust it as needed, but what you wanna do is just make these basic forms for right now, okay? So definitely doesn't look like a panda yet, but we just wanna focus on basic forms and getting things kind of started so that then we can start adding forms. I would not recommend keeping your head on the post. The post is still really soft and plastic, and you don't want it to get all bent out of shape, okay? So this is where we're starting, and then we'll kind of continue to do demos to add his features and model the face and that kind of thing, okay? Any questions right now? Okay, will you go ahead and stop for me?